you're not overpaying if the market is willing to pay that.
We took it in as-is condition, but when we got there to the home inspection, we found some major unsettling, like we're talking angled staircases, an angled garage.
We're not doing this to inflate the prices or anything along those lines. This is what it takes to win. Thanks for tuning in today. I'm Andy, and this is Liz. We're the Revo residential team based out of Chicago, and we are elevating real estate experiences to support abundant lifestyles. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the lesser known things that buyers should know in this market, because we are seeing a lot of things that buyers might not be aware of because they are not in the market day to day like we are, right?
Correct.
So what would you say is one of the biggest things you're seeing right now that maybe buyers are not knowing or not comfortable with?
I think right now, the number one thing is just reiterating to them that when we are preparing an offer, we are trying to eliminate all contingencies if we can. We are trying to offer the cleanest terms possible, but we oftentimes cannot ask for repairs or replacements in that initial offer.
Right.
You know, we walk through and you and I both know that we're looking up, down, all around. We're able to, we know a little about a lot in our business. And so we're able to say, okay, this furnace is probably going to die within the next 1 to 2 years.
Yep.
Or, oh, I see a few, stains on the ceiling. What's that from? Or the hardwood floors might need to be refinished. And a buyer might be thinking, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And what we're trying to do is give them the best foot forward, the most competitive, clean offer as possible, but we just cannot generally address those up front, especially if we're in a competitive situation.
Yeah, one of my buyers recently saw me just walking through the house like this, just looking, and I'm like, oh, I'm just looking for, any signs of water.
We're not bored.
No, we're not bored. Like, no, we're actually looking for those things that they're not looking for, right? We want you to look at the house and say, can I live here, right? And we're saying we're going to look for all those things that you might not be noticing, because if you're in a multiple offer situation, you have to offer your offer as is.
So a lot of people think what am I walking into? Maybe my mom and dad will freak out if I do that. It's just so common. We've been seeing it for the last 4 to 5 years, but even right now in this market, it is still so crucial. The one thing to remember is that we have options with as-is condition. It does say, yes, we are willing to take the home in the condition that it currently stands. We are not going to ask the seller for repairs, credits, replacements, anything along those lines. But what we are allowed to do, and this is our job while we are in the attorney review process, is that if anything major has come up during the home inspection, foundation issues, major roof replacement needed, moisture damage.
Yeah, mold.
Everyone hates water. If we do find anything that is a deal breaker or a health and safety hazard, yes, we're going to bring that up. And my thought on this is that more often than not, even if there might be 5 or 6 other offers that also offered in as-is condition with no requests, the seller is going to want to know about any major defect in their home, because if they cancel the deal on us or if we cancel the deal on them and they switch to the next offer, more often than not, that same issue is going to come up. So this just happened in a very competitive situation that I had in a large condo in Lincoln Park. We knew that we were up against some really other strong offers. We ended up winning. We took it in as-is condition, but when we got there to the home inspection, we found some major unsettling, we're talking angled staircases, an angled garage that was almost sagging. And we noticed that the next door condo, which was built in the same time frame, same style, they had mitigated that and they had made that fix. But the condo we were buying didn't. And so respectfully, my clients said, listen, we know that this is important. We don't want to be on the hook for this. Is the seller willing to help contribute to that so that we can get this structurally fixed down the line? And thankfully, we were able to come to terms.
Yeah.
So it's not impossible, but we just don't recommend doing that up front until we really get in there with the eagle eye lens.
Yeah. I think buyers need to realize too is that put yourself in the seller's shoes, right? What are they going to want to see? They're going to want somebody to be taking it as is. They don't want to get to the inspection period and then now you're asking for a lot of little things, nickel and diming, right? If you do that, they're going to say, all right, we're going to move on to the next offer, right? And that's what I would tell my seller clients to do if this buyer started being difficult. We have other options to choose from, right? So put your feet or put yourself in those seller's shoes and realize that, okay, most people are going to be taking this as is, right? You can also waive the inspection. I mean, we've seen it only a handful of times, if that, but the person that waives the inspection completely is the most likely one to get it as long as their other terms are pretty competitive, because then we're just skipping that whole part. We don't recommend that because it is super risky, but if you are risk adverse, that is something you could offer.
And speaking of being, competitive in terms of other offer terms, if you're using cash to purchase, like that's great. We know that you're solid. All you have to do is show your proof of funds. And, generally the closing period can be a lot shorter with less contingencies. A lot of buyers right now have to mortgage their home. So our number one thing that we say, this is even before we take our buyers out, is you have to be pre-approved. And that's true. I will never go back on that. But anymore, a pre-approval letter may not be as strong as if your lender is actually able to fully underwrite you. That's like the utmost confidence and assurance to a seller that this deal, like everything, every condition has been looked at, and this is such a solid buyer. Like, we do not foresee any issues with their financing.
Yeah, and having your lender basically having a cash guarantee is going to go a long way as well. One thing I also wanted to note on the as-is part, just to go back a little bit, when we bought an investment property out of state, we took it as is. We offered as is, and I think we offered full price. It was like $250,000, right? And something came up in the inspection for an electrical repair that was going to cost about $2,500. We still asked for it, and we got it. The agent knew the other agent, and it was a very cordial, discussion. If it's something like major like that, you can do that. We do say it is risky, and we have to let you know that there is risk involved whenever you say you're going to take it as is, and then you ask for something. It should only be something like that, which is, I would say, that was 1% of the purchase price. Like that's pretty significant, right? If it's something that's walking, if like the foundation was, terrible, we would have just walked away. But this was like something that was kind of in between. So I don't want people to think that they can't ask for something, but generally just only major things that are, health or safety hazards, not cosmetic repairs. But back to the pre-approval amount, obviously like cash is great. But having that pre-approval buttoned up and the lender on board and being fully underwritten is going to go a long way.
Another thing that's been really tough, and this is just for me personally, because I am somebody that in my personal life, I generally like to take time to think through my decisions. Any of my friends or my family will tell you that. If we're trying to plan a vacation and they're trying to get an answer out of me within like 3 days, sorry, Charlie, like I need to think about it. I've got to plan through it. So for me personally, I like to take my time in thinking through these, big decisions. Buying a home is a really big decision.
The biggest.
The number one thing I do not want to do is for my buyers to feel pressure. And I'm not a pushy person. I do not want anybody running into this decision and then having regrets at the end. But in terms of managing their expectations, right now we are seeing homes that are being listed on a Wednesday or a Thursday. They may or may not hold weekend open houses. If they do, we are even seeing in the broker remarks that if multiple offers are received, we already have a deadline in mind. That's wild. You're basically suggesting, I know this is a great listing, I know this is gonna sell quickly, so I'm gonna go ahead and put a deadline out there before it even hits the market.
Right.
But that's what's happening. So I think talking to buyers about, let's try to get in as soon as possible so that you have as much time as possible to consider whether this is the right home for you. But if you are one of those last people on a Sunday at the very tail end of an open house and you have a Monday offer deadline, there's going to be a quick turnaround. So this just all goes back to what we always talk about with being prepared and needing to move quickly, because there are probably 5, 6, 7, 10 other people that are in the same position as you and want this home just as bad.
Yeah, I mean, we never want to pressure someone. I would hate for someone to have buyer's remorse, but at the same time, like, you do have to move quickly, and you have to realize, like, oh, is this the house for me? And most people do know that within the first 10 seconds of even stepping into a place. But once they walk through it, like most people know, like, yeah, this is great, let's put in an offer. And I think you also have to be okay with not getting too attached to any one place in this market. This market is just ongoing of seller's market. It's been like this for several years, ever since COVID. Even before COVID, it was somewhat of a seller's market. You just have to be understanding that, like, listen, it might take a couple times. Like, we are pretty good at winning multiple offer situations, but we can't win every one. Sometimes people just, they go nuts and they offer cash and they go way above, and, and you know, how can you compete with that sometimes?
I think that it's also like, you know, we always want to win on the first time, right?
Well, we're competitive people, so.
We are competitive, but so I want to win on the first time every time, but that's not our reality. So I do think that if you happen to lose out on offers 2, 3, 4 times, that you really do start to kind of toughen up and understand, you know, I'm not here to tell you that you have to give them your firstborn child in order to win this home, but let's put it all out there. If you love this home, let's put it all out there, have no regrets, etc. And that kind of brings me to my next point, which are, you know, what are your must-haves and what are your nice-to-haves? Let's not get it twisted, right?
Before you say that, I have one other thing to add about the places with, I want people to realize that not every little segment of this market is this ultra competitive market, right? Where you're up against like 10 offers. It is very common, but I will say that I have a few buyers under contract this year so far, and none of them were multiple offer situations. And 2 of them we got under list price by a decent amount. And that's because,
Bravo.
Well, if it's a certain market, right? Like one is a co-op building, which is usually not that competitive because co-ops are generally appealing to a small segment of buyers. And one was downtown, and downtown Chicago is not the same market as a 3-bedroom in Lakeview, Lincoln Park, right? So I just want to mention that not every market is the same in Chicago. And so you got to talk to us and say, what is it looking like here versus there? You know, where do I have to realize that this competition exists, and where can I negotiate?
Right. And that's kind of parlays into what your needs and wants lists are, which is something that we prep our buyers for way before we take them out. You know, we try to stick to that wish list as best that we can. But let's just say, for example, you're looking for that 3-bed, 2-bath in Lincoln Park, Lakeview. Well, you're competing against a massive pool of people that want the exact same thing. So if we are continually losing out on multiple offer situations, what are some things that we can compromise on? What are the things you can't compromise on? Okay, well, we will make sure that like that is non-negotiable. But for the nice to have, what if you can live with this bathroom or this kitchen for a little bit? You know, what if you can save up a little bit of money and find something that's more of a outdated, not a full fixer-upper, but something that is more within budget that isn't as desirable and then doesn't end up having 5 offers by the end of the weekend. So I think just like adjusting expectations, it doesn't mean that you're necessarily compromising. And then the benefit of being able to update a space to your own liking is that you get to have it exactly as you want it, just maybe not right when you move in.
Right. And something I've been telling people too is, listen, location is always the most important piece of this, right? Location, location, location.
Okay, everyone knows
oldest
location.
Phrase in real estate. But it's really true, right? And something you have to consider is like, okay, if I'm looking in a neighborhood that is super competitive, what am I not considering? What might be something I've been more open to, right? Like you might be considering, you know, Lakeview, but didn't really consider like
Old Irving Park.
Well, Old Irving Park, but I'm trying to think of like more north that's not as competitive right now, like Sheridan Park or Edgewater Glen, or you know, something along those lines. I mean, Edgewater Glen is still competitive too, but right, like, or like let's say like North Center and like Irving Park, Albany Park, right? Those are going to be a little less competitive, better pricing. You might be able to stretch your purchase further, right? Your dollar goes further in certain markets. So while I don't want you to sacrifice location to a degree that, you know, you hate your neighborhood and you know,
it's hard to get to work.
Yeah, you're not near public transit and all this stuff, or the market is going to be bad in the future, whatever it is. You do have options. This city is very diverse, and it has lots of, you know, close options to what you're looking for if you just, you know, maybe go a little bit further in one direction or another.
And that's why it's fun for us to kind of cover off on different neighborhoods that we work in and that we play in because we know so much about like what fits and what some of the challenges are. Another competitive strategy that I'm seeing on nearly every single one of my listings, with the exception of the cash offers, is the appraisal gap waiver.
Right. That's pretty much you must have too now.
It's so tough to have a buyer wrap their head around the fact that they might be able to escalate their price way beyond what they initially expected to pay or way over the listing price. But then to have the bank say, no, it's not quite worth that value, and then accepting that and then coming up with that cash balance is even more out of their pocket. It's tough.
Right.
Maybe they budgeted for that, maybe they haven't, but it's really a strong thing. I'm seeing it in, offer emails when we know we're against multiple offers and the listing agent is doing a great job. Bulk sends out an email to all of us saying, hey, I know you came through. If your buyer likes it and wants to submit an offer, these are the things my client is looking for.
Right.
If you want to buy this home. And nearly 99% of the time is if you're going to offer over asking, we want some sort of appraisal assurance.
Right, and that can be anywhere from a 10,000 gap guarantee, 20,000, or any gap, right? And
right.
The any gap one is the best because you're saying, no matter what the difference is, if there is a difference in the appraisal, I'm willing to cover that. A lot of buyers might think that's overpaying. You could argue that, but I would say this is so common right now, and we're in an appreciating market that you're setting the comps for the future places that are similar to yours, right? So like you're setting the new standard. Like this is what the market is saying it's worth. You're not overpaying if the market is willing to pay that. Be okay with the appraisal gap coverage, right? And we're not doing this to like inflate the prices or anything along those lines. This is what it takes to win.
Yeah, I mean, and don't be discouraged by, needing to have 20% down in order to cover said appraisal gap. Like we are seeing a lot of lenders out there that are able to provide really strong appraisal gaps, even with as low as 10% down.
Yeah.
So, we've got options. It's just, it all has to do with what you're comfortable for.
One little elephant in the room is commissions, right? And paying your broker. Before we get into that, one thing I'd like to say, I say this all the time, like, I know we're real estate agents, right? We're real estate agents. This is how we make money. We get it. You don't have to use a real estate agent. But I will say that if you don't use a real estate agent in this market, you will not get a place. If you're looking in these certain areas, because, unless you were an agent at one point, like, you just don't understand what the market is demanding and what you need to do to make yourself competitive. Like, it does happen. We do have offers come through without agents. They're usually at the bottom of the option list.
Well, they're not necessarily as organized. Maybe they're only using an attorney who is using a different contract. Like, there's all the different things that people will try to.
Family will say, like, just offer 10,000 under list or 10% under list and negotiate from there. And like, if you try that, you're just going to get.
Well, and
not considered.
It's all part of just presenting the offers to your seller too, saying, I'm not necessarily saying that having a relationship with another realtor is going to make or break who wins an offer, but if I know that I'm working with some really great agents on the other side, I'm going to let my seller know, I know they've got a great reputation. I know they know what they're doing. I know that they're going to be communicative. They're going to manage their client, the way that we want them to, et cetera. And they're probably a strong, candidate to work with versus, and this person is not represented,
Right.
So like, what assurances do we have there? Like, it all seems a bit risky, but it's not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, and I want people to realize too that at the end of the day, a seller is going to care about what they net ultimately. And so a lot of the offers we're seeing, I would say majority of them are still asking the seller to cover the buyer's brokerage commission. But I will say that if the buyer...
Hot topic.
I know it's a hot topic. But I will say that if a buyer is able to cover a portion of that or all of that, you don't have to go as high of a price because you're going to net about the same if somebody did over, let's say the commission amount came out to, let's say $10,000 for whatever it is, right?
10,000 bananas.
10,000 bananas. You were willing to pay that, and then another broker is going to be financing that. They have to come up in price to cover that so that, the seller would net the same. It's either, are you going to cover it now or are you going to finance it? And either route is fine, but you can be more competitive if you have the funds to pay your own broker. But majority of the ones we're seeing, it's still being part of the offer to ask to be covered. Some of our competitive ones that they were super competitive, we've gone like, splits, a portion of it, whatever it may be, just to make it look a little stronger and stand out amongst the competition.
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that is nice about the NAR settlement that was put in place almost 2 years ago now is that everybody has full transparency as to, what our commissions are and how that structure works when we're submitting that on the offer.
Right.
And it's even been built into the offer now,
Right.
I used to have clients that wanted to know exactly what the seller would be willing to cover for my buyer's agent commission before we even showed that home. Because if they weren't going to cover it and my buyer would have to, they'd say, nope, don't want to go there. It's going to be too expensive for me. But nowadays, hardly any seller's agent is even answering that question.
Right.
The boilerplate response that I've been getting is write it into the contract.
I mean, I don't even ask about it.
I don't ask anymore either.
Yeah.
Because there is a section on the contract where you just write it in. So
Right.
you want to be competitive there. Okay, maybe you talk to your client about that and then you reduce it.
Yeah,
But
and upfront what you're going to pay your agent, because now we're required to have a buyer's brokerage
that's what I'm
agreement
saying.
upfront.
For that, yep.
Yeah.
The transparency is there from day one. It's
Right.
just, we hope that isn't something that comes into effect because it can affect the buyer's affordability on a home if they are then having to come out of pocket for additional commission costs.
Yeah, I know. I kind of hate it that it's
I don't love it.
Well, it's part of the negotiation process now, which is, it's not great. I don't love it, but for the most part, we're seeing it not be an issue.
It's not as big of an issue. We had somebody recently ask us, how many buyers' contracts have you submitted where the buyer has waived commission? And we did the math, and I think it was like 4 out of the last 60 deals that we had done that the buyers chose to pay our commission in full, and we fully waived it from the seller.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. I mean, I do it for myself. Like real estate agents do it for themselves because it doesn't make sense to take commission
taxes,
that you're going to pay taxes on. But I would say that, I've only had a handful that I can think of where they contributed some part to it. And that was in super competitive situations where that helps make your offer stand out.
Yeah.
So that is something, to consider. But if you're not able to do that, like I said, you can always build it into your offer. And as long as the seller nets an amount they're happy with, that's what you should focus on.
Okay, so another question that I've gotten recently is that if there is a special assessment, let's say you're buying a condo, not a single family home, but a condo, and obviously there's the HOA, you're gonna have your reserves, we wanna make sure those are healthy, but what if there's a big special assessment that's coming up? Maybe the roof needs to be replaced, maybe they're waterproofing the building or doing tuck pointing or sealing the block. Something that's big and going to be kind of costly for all of the unit owners. Like, how has that been affecting your buyers walking into that process? Are they saying to the seller, don't worry about it, like, we'll pay for it, you don't have to pay for it, and that's how I'm going to try to win this offer? Or are you still seeing that it's negotiable or that the seller is willing to cover some of those bigger?
I'm seeing more so that the sellers are covering it. I think a lot of them are saying upfront or in the broker remarks that seller's going to pay off the special at closing.
Yeah.
A lot of HOAs require it, if not all, I believe. Like you can't just pass on this amount to the next person, or it has to be paid off, or you have to figure something out. But most sellers are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, and usually we do know about those up front because if the listing agent has done their due diligence, they will know that there is a special assessment that's impending and making sure that the buyer is aware of that and how the seller is going to handle it.
Yeah, and with special assessments too, the way I look at it, because we talk about this sometimes, is that the seller's going to cover it, but then they're moving out. So what are they paying for? In my opinion, you're paying for something that wasn't properly budgeted for in the past. So it's something that you should be responsible for as a seller. If you're being responsible and taking care of projects as they come up and you have good reserves, you shouldn't have to worry about any special assessments. But if something comes up that you're like, we weren't planning for this, and then you just try to get out of it by selling it to, passing the buck.
Yeah, that's not going to go over well.
No, that's not going to go over well. And a buyer shouldn't even be considering that then. It's depending on, like, a lot of high rises are going through riser projects right now, like a lot of the ones that were built in the 60s and 70s, or window projects. I mean, these are multi-million-dollar fixes, and some of these assessments have been, these special assessments have been outrageous. A few $1,000s spread out over 5 years, okay, you're not going to notice it that much. But if it's $40,000, you're going to notice that.
Right.
And that happens. Not with our buyers, I hope.
No.
I don't think I've come across it, but I've heard of some, or like a major facade project or repair, So we're seeing a lot of that. And you have to be weary of certain buildings of certain ages and knowing. Like, one of the things I'm seeing a lot of that I always tell my buyers too is that, listen, we had a building boom in the early to mid 2000s. Places were going up fast and cheaply. Knowing the building construction materials and knowing who constructed it and are they maintaining it, right? Are they doing the things they need to be doing? Think about when those dates were, 2004 to 2008, and it's 2026 right now. That's 20 years. The roof needs to be replaced, the furnace needs to be replaced, the water heater definitely needs to be replaced if it hasn't yet, the AC, right? All these things are like, either 8 to 12 years, 12 to 15, or 15 to 20 years. If they haven't been done, they're going to need to be done soon. So that's something to look at. Like, walking through a place, a buyer might not care about the age of the mechanicals. Like, they never ask that. We ask that.
Right.
We're looking for that. But knowing that, because listen, if nothing has been done, you're going to have $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 in repairs over the next 5 years. Like, who wants that?
And who are you mad at? You didn't know about it, or you didn't care at the time.
Yeah.
So
and a lot of agents list out what, the dates they know of things being repaired and replaced. And so that's great. Like, in our building, we just did the roof, big one. It was built in 2004, so 22 years old. And I mean, it's great. And we got a new deck. So I hope
there you go.
Yeah. Get some benefit out of it. We've had a new washer dryer, garbage disposal, which no one really cares about. And the appliances are good, 2017 or so. So if passing that on, I feel pretty good. It's like, listen, not everything's gonna be brand new. It's not new construction, but let's make sure that not everything is 2005.
Right. Yeah, you don't want to pass along a lemon.
Yeah, but if everything's working, it's kind of hard to argue with it. And you really can't. You can't ask for that. Just because the stove and the fridge are 2005, if they're working fine, there's nothing you can really do.
Right.
No one's going to give you a credit for something that's working.
Way back when, which applies to now, but a long time ago, I had a buyer who went under contract and on a really great condo, single guy, first time buying, but definitely had his parents' influence. The furnace was really old, but it was working.
Well, some of those old ones they're still kicking.
They're built to
I've seen some
last.
furnaces and ACs that are 50 years old.
I saw one from Sears that was from 1974, and I mean, we're talking it looked like something out of Home Alone, Kevin in the basement.
Yeah.
But it was still working. So anyway, but my point is, this buyer that went under contract did the home inspection, and the home inspector said, this furnace is really old. It's a little bit dirty, but it is still working. Well, the parents didn't like that so much. Parents wanted a credit or a replacement for the furnace. Guess who didn't like that at all? The seller.
Yeah.
Seller ended up canceling the deal on us for even asking about it. It was old, but it was in working condition. So you just have to manage expectations.
Yeah, I have a story as well too with a past client. We were under contract on a place, it was 2-bedroom, younger single guy. I think it was in one of the Sandberg Terrace buildings, and had the inspection, and for the most part we're agreeing on everything, but then the stove had a cracked glass on it, which gas could get out, etc. So we were asking for repair, replacement. I think we ended up just asking for a $500 credit. Lo and behold, the buyer talked to the attorney who was not familiar with Chicago, and they sent out a letter without my knowledge saying, pay this $500 or we're gonna walk. Or we're going to cancel the deal.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst.
And they canceled the deal. And they didn't even tell us. We were just waiting for their response. And it was a day or so later. I'm like, guys, the place is on the market. They just canceled and they sent the letter. And this guy's playing.
That is the worst feeling ever.
He's playing old school, we're just going to show them who's boss and we're going to, make them. And it's no, they're just going to walk. And they did. They walked. And they didn't say, I don't even know if they sent a letter. I think we sent the letter. And so that kills the deal. right there. If you send a letter, I think that's what it was. We sent the letter, and they're like, okay.
It's so important to have like an attorney that you have communication with.
Or working with one of the great attorneys that we recommend.
Exactly.
Like, we don't require it, but the reason we work with these people is because we've known them for a long time. I think
we know that they'll pick up the phone at any hour and be able to like actually.
Well, I don't know about that.
True. Okay. Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
But, be able to like communicate reasonably with a buyer just the same way that we would.
Yeah.
They've got their own relationship. That's fine. We have to respect that. But being able to have like full visibility into what the decisions are on both ends is really important.
Yeah, so I think that would be the last point here is we always have our recommended people to work with, right? Attorney, inspector, lenders if you need them, right? And all sorts of people that can help you with a place once you're in there. But the attorney, lender, and the inspector are the big ones up front. And we have our people that we recommend, we've worked with for many years, if not over a decade, that we know will get the job done, right? You're not required to use them. But anytime we see a deal go south, it's usually because someone is not part of our team as normal.
Right.
It's like I've had some lender from Florida who didn't know what he was doing. I had attorneys from the suburbs didn't know what they were doing.
Yeah.
Or they're just used to doing it a certain way and they don't realize how it's done in Chicago.
Right.
Following those recommendations is, again, it's not required, but we highly recommend going with people that we know are going to do a good job.
Crazy market out there. Make sure that you've got a good team around you.
Mm-hmm.
Be prepared. Understand what you're getting into. You're not just overpaying. If this is the time that you need to buy or sell your home, listen to your agent, listen to the advice that we're giving you. It's just really important to have all of your expectations managed up front, know exactly like what strategies work, and just putting it all out there to the best of your ability. That's all you can do.
So I would say to the people watching, if you're thinking about buying or selling within the next 6 to 12 months, reach out to us. You can send us a DM. Our phone numbers are there available. You can email us at team@revolresidential.com. Fill out the JOT form. That's our little client intake form. That's probably the best way to do it. We get all the notifications around that. We want to help you. We want to help everyone we can because we're confident in the job we're doing here, and we want you to have the proper guidance when you're going through this process.
Exactly.
It's a big deal.
It's a really big deal.
So choose accordingly.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, that too.